My name is Keilla Menezes, and I will talk about reactive programming. I come from Brazil, and it's my first time in Italy, in Europe indeed, and I am software developer, consultant at ThoughtWorks, and I'm also GGE, like he said, in Angular and web technologies. Okay, I was born in a small city in Brazil, and Brazil is a huge country. So my state has the same size of the entire Italy. Now I live in São Paulo. It's the biggest city in my country. I have 2 cats and 2 sisters. And although my parents are so proud I'm here with you today, they have no idea what I do for a living. They came for Italy once. They were in a Europe tour. And that time, knowing my mom would go to France, I asked her to bring me some macarons, but I didn't say to her what was. So in Brazil, we speak Portuguese, and the word pasta is macarrão. And when she arrived in Brazil, she gave me a pack of pasta. And I said, it's not macarrão, Mom. It's macaron. And this even taught me to give some context when trying to communicate with people. Let's start. Software engineer as a science has about 60 years old. It's a young search field, and look at all the amount of knowledge we accumulated and evolved through these years. And every day, we are creating new things. And as developers, we handle with problems every single day. And I believe that's the reason people pay us. To think about problems, they need to find a solution. And that's the strength. In a certain way, we like to do that. And did you remember when you start to learn to code? For me, it was about 16 years ago when I entered in this wonderful world of programming. And for me, and I think for the major people, when start to learn to code, they are taught to think in an imperative way. And it makes sense, since it is the way computers thinking. Imagine a problem a computer should solve. It has some inputs following sequential steps with some conditionals that may result in an expected output. And this way of thinking carries many concerns about how to solve a problem. And many times worried with implementation details. And may distract us about the main concern you should put our attention. What is the expected behavior? What is the key? And not too much on how. I have here an application, I coded in JavaScript. It has a proposal to draw some geometric shapes and calculate their areas. The rules are quite simple. I have this space that I call as canvas. So when I click on it, a point is drawn. When 3 points exist, a parallelogram that included those points is drawn. And after that, a circle with the same center and area of the parallelogram is rendered. And I have also coordinates and area values in these boxes alongside the canvas. And when I move those points, all shapes are updated. In a way of imperative program, this could be a common solution. So in my canvas class, I have onClick method that draws a point, draw a parallelogram, draw a circle, update coordinates, and update area. And in my point class, I buy another event or move that draws a parallelogram, draws a circle, update coordinates, and update area. At first sight, you can see duplicated code. And Could you imagine how could be this messy? I have background in web development. Most of time think that way. But Angular is a reactive system. Router, HTTP requests, components interactions. Behind the scenes, we use Rxjs, a JavaScript library, to deal with reactivity. Although when I started to create Angular applications, the imperative mindset followed me. And that's how it looks like the code I started creating. The famous spaghetti code. And did you remember the old websites that we had less than 20 years ago? For web history is like Stone Age. Nowadays, you have such dynamic applications, so interactive, with rich animations that refreshes smoothly. For the user experience, it's amazing. But for the one who create those applications, it's a challenge. And can become a crazy task. Not only crazy, but also can become a hell. You have functions which callbacks depends on other functions. It's not so hard to get in callback hell. And the rule is, for me, when things start to get crazy, it's time to think to use Rxjs. And with reactive program, we have many elements that has that nature, asynchronous nature, like events, animations, HTTP requests, variables chains. All of them carry values that change over time. Imagine an array, but those values are emitted asynchronously. In the presentation layer, it's so clear to see that all this interactivity is obvious. But the reactivity is not limited to front-end applications or JavaScript ecosystem. Almost all languages have a Rx library. For example, Rxjava is the key for enabling server-side concurrency in Netflix API. And not only you can find reactive in the code itself, but you also can see that in some architectural solutions. For example, cloud functions, which are event-driven serverless applications. And the challenge is, how do you change our mindset that was educated to think in an imperative way? How do you break these vicious circles? With the same old thinking, you get the same old results. Our brain has a reticular activation system. It is compared to a filter that's work for our brain. It makes sure your brain doesn't have to deal with more information that it can handle. Thus, reticular activation system plays a big role on the sensory information you perceive daily. Did it happen to you a curious phenomenon when you say, for example, I never see yellow beetles anymore, and after that, this type of car suddenly appear in front of you? It's not necessarily mean that the number of yellow beetles increased in your city or in your neighborhood. Another situation. Imagine you are at an airport and there is so much noise, people talking, airport announcements. And in the middle of all this noise, your name is announced. And it's important information for your brain. And that's the reason your brain puts its attention on it. It's not a mystic phenomenon. It's how our brain works. And the same way, when you start to pushing yourselves into reactive mindset, the reactive mantra take over our thoughts. Everything can be a stream. I agree with this affirmation, But I don't advocate it at any cost, since I believe software engineering history has shown that you don't have a silver bullet for all the problems. Any approach you embrace have trade-offs that you have to consider based on many variables. And talking about Rx is hard since it's a such formal concept. Rx is a library for composing synchronous and event-based programs using observable collections. That is, Rx deal with data over time. And Rxjs implements the observable observer partner. And the observable represents the application data. And the observer reacts when it's changed. But the observable is not the data itself. It's like the wrapping. And the flexibility of this implementation is that you can have different observers that listen to a unique observable, but react in many ways. And talking about code, what is an observable in Rxjs? It's just a function. And can you tell me what does this code do? Does something? Does nothing? Okay, does nothing. Since you have to connect the observable and the observer, you do that using subscribe method. So to start the execution. And the observer is just an object with 3 callbacks: next, error, and complete. The first callback next pass value to the observer. And in this case, you have the subscribe method. I will pass in the message, hello Verona. You should see finally in console, hello Verona. The second callback is an error that notifies an error to the observer. And different for the next, you can call anytime the next method pass any time of object. The error just finished my observable. So in this case, you should see in the console, hello, an error happened. And the third and last callback is complete method. So we just finished our observable. In this case, you should see in the console, hello, done. It's very important to differ 2 types of observables, hot and cold observables. The cold observables, which values are created inside the observable. In this case, no matter the moment I subscribe, for example, the from method, I get all the values, in the case, all the values from this array. In the other hand, the hot observables, their values are created outside the observable. So a classical example are mouse clicks. So you just get those values that happens after you do the subscription. And the power of Rxjs relies on these operators. And with them, you can filter, transform, you can change those operators. And the rule is observable always return observable. Are you aware about a curious phenomenon about cats? No matter, it's scientific also, no matter how the cat falls, they always falls on their feet. For me, it's like a tautology, to be or not to be. That's the question. Or there's nothing you can do that can be done. Nothing you can sing that can be sung. Don't forget, observables always return observable. I brought some operators. The first one is filter. It's very similar to the array method. Remember, observable as array, but those values are emitted asynchronously. And in this case, just B is emitted. The second one is keep a while. Nothing happens until some conditional is satisfied. So in this case, unless value is less than 3, no value is the emission didn't start. So when value is 3, I emitted 3 and the next 2. And the bouncing time, you have to wait amount of time to start emission. So it's very useful in scenarios such as type ahead, when the user input must be under control. And in this case, I'm using the interval method that emits a nit at every second. And I'm using the bounce time, just change the time I have to wait. And with the take operator, that gets the 2 first emission and complete my observable. And the next 2 are do transformations. The first one is map. It just returns two times the value. And the last one is plug. It's useful when you're not interested in the whole object. In this case, I just want the name of the person. And observables require memory, subscriptions require memory. So it's strongly recommended when it's not necessary to listen the observable anymore, you unsubscribe. You can do that using explicit calling unsubscribe method or using operators like take or take until that do that under the hood. So it's time to live in code. So let me see if you can, I don't know. Okay. But I can see there, it's not good. Sorry, I'm just trying to find out how to do that. Anyone can help me, please? Sorry. I just moved to I want to see there, the VS Code. Do you want to yeah, to copy. Scream, I believe. I believe it's a scream, right? Yeah. Here. No.
It's a screen and displays.
Okay.
Arrangement. Mirror displays.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry about that. Okay. It's good for you, for everybody to see? Okay. For example, I have this application here, so I can transform promises into observables. So I create a new promise here. Resolve and reject. Okay. And I'll call resolve method. I will put some time here. Just wait a little bit. And okay. Resolve it. Okay. And I can get these prompts here. And using from method, I can transform into an observable. So I can subscribe to it and just show what's coming in console. So let's see. Okay, resolve it. Let's see the difference about hot and cold observables. In this case, I will create an observable here, observable, And we're using create method. And I will create like a value inside here, just a random number, random, and just call next method passing this value, okay. And I will subscribe to this 2 times. So subscribe. Okay, I'll do that 2 times. Saving. Okay, is the value is created inside observable. So they are independent string. They are different values. But for example, if I move X outside my observable, so the value it creates outside is a hot observable. In this case, what should happen? The same value. Okay, and we've taken 2 operator, demonstrate some example, and I will declare an interval here. Use interval method, passing, for example, 500 milliseconds, and I'll declare another one that is my max. And I can use inter, and to use operators, I have to use pipe method. Inside, I put take it until and pass this observable max. So I will subscribe to it and just print in the console. Okay. 0, 1, and 2. And take it until also completes my observable. I can check this in my third callback. Second, I put just null. And the third one, okay, I don't have to put anything here. Done. Saving. 0, 1, 2, done. Okay. And I have an operator that is called, even my observable gets an error or is just completed, that is finalized. In this case, I'm completing my observable. So just to see how it works, I can put here. Oops. Yeah. Okay. And when you get an error in an observable, it's done. It's complete. It cannot pass values using act method. But it can do something. For example, I will declare another observable here. Create using create method. So I will call next here. Okay, 1, okay, 2, and okay, 3. Oh, I forgot to subscribe. Okay, subscribing. So I will just print those values. Okay, 1, 2, okay, 3. But if an error happens here, what should you see? Just okay, 1. But you cannot continue emit with this observable, but you can create a new observable. Sometimes it's useful in your application. So in this case, we use pipe here, and I will use an operator called catch error. So with this operator, we will return a new observable, just using off method, just for example, okay, for yeah, thank you. And now what should happen? I return okay 1 and the observable with value 2 or 4. And let's come back for the presentation now. So after all this reactive, how could you propose a new solution for the draw shapes problem? Remember, 3 points, a parallelogram and a circle, and I have to update the coordinates and area values. In my Canvas class, in my onClick method, I just draw a point. So in my point class, I created a new subject that passes the coordinate values to wherever wants to listen to it. And when I move, I also do that. So in my parallelogram, I listen to this new observable subject, and I'm just interesting when I have 3 coordinates. So that's the reason I'm using a filter operator that draws a point. So I created a new subject that passes the area and the center to the circle. At least is listen to that subject and draws the circles, and after that emit a next event. And let's get into some Angular reactivity. So imagine you have to implement a loading component. You can create a loading service that listens to router events, which are observables. So I have the subject to show loading that pass the value true when navigation starts. Otherwise, when navigation ends, pass value false. So I have a specific time of subject that's called behavior subject. And in this case, this subject requires initialization because I want to make sure that the full value for loading is false. I have this application I implemented months ago in Angular. The page had 3 sections, and each of those sections consumes different services and different databases. So I had a layer, a BFF layer, that sends to me a unique JSON object. The problem I had, if some service were dead, I couldn't load my entire page. So to turn the table, I implemented parallel request using fork join operator, and not only I achieve a more error-resilient system, but also I could get data faster. And I implemented retry feature just to load the section that failed. Those examples were about services. And how about components? I had to implement a core component, and you know, the expected behavior is open it on click on its header. And if there is some another element, that item that is active, you have to close it. So in my accordion template, I just put an indicon directive, and the meat and potatoes are in my accord item template. So I had a header and a content section, and I use CSS class to bind properties. And the usage is nesting a accord item into my accordion. So my class, my accord item component class, I create an event emitter, what is an observable. And when I open my accord item, I just emit a notification using the emit method. And in my accord component, I subscribe for those observables to make sure I close active item. And I especially like this way to do unsubscribe. So I declare a subject and pass into take it until operator. And when I destroy my component, I just complete the subject. So I don't need to call unsubscribe explicitly. And the cherry on the top is that component I had to implement is a modal component that made like make HTTP request and load some content. And did you notice I use a lot of subject in all my implementations? But those examples, they doesn't have the possibility to fail. It's different for this one. It can fail since it is a HTTP request. Yeah, I couldn't do that. So I will show to you what happens. I made an example here. Modal subject. Yeah. So I had, I just make an example for you to know, but it was very similar what I did. I have a data service here. I'm just returning an observable of string. I did that, put in a value here, and I will increase it, this value. For the second time, I'm simulating an error. Otherwise, it's going to be success. So I'm returning observable, passing data returned. In my model component, I have like a loading message when the is loading, is getting the data. Otherwise, it show a message. The message is like content load or content get error. So I had an input property here that is a subject, the way I tried to do the first time. And I just subscribe to this. And I'm using finalize to remember that otherwise, no matter if it gets an error or success, I want to remove the loading. So in my app component, I'm just using the loading, passing the subject as input property, and I'm using this click to open a modal. So in my app component, I create the subject here, and when I click to open modal, I call open from the modal component and get data. So I just put delay to simulate a real HTTP request that takes a little bit longer, and using tap just to say I finished the request, and I'm using catch error to call error if something got wrong. So let's see what's happened. First time, should load my content. Second time, should get an error. And the other time, yeah, didn't work. So, I have to back to theory. And in this incredible article from Ben Lash, for me, it's the master of Rxjs on the subject of subjects. What he said about people like me that are always on the subjects. While this is helpful for people new to Rxjs, and in that capacity, totally fine, it's not really the Rx way to handle things like this. So I was not being so reactive as I thought. And do you remember the subject partner we have in the Gango 4? It's very similar to the idea for subject in Rxjs. And you have to register the observable. So a subject has a state. If something fails, getting an error, it's closed. I can do nothing anymore. That's the reason I get an error in my modal first implementation. So, and remember what is observable in Rxjs? It's just a function. And I try again. Okay. So, in my data service, I have the same implementation. So the second time is get an error. The other times is going to be success. In my modal component templates, is the same thing. In my modal component class, is almost the same thing. Instead, now I have an observable. And the method is the same thing that was done before. And my app component, I have my app modal. But now, instead of passing the subject here, and my ng on init method, I'm just using a pure function here. So I create a new observable, and when get success, I just call next, and when I get error, I just call error method. So let's see what's happened. First time, content loaded, content error, and content loaded. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much.